Okay, so welcome to the open day, the online open day for the Rehabilitation Engineering and Assistive Technologies program. I know this supposed to start at 1, but I can see there's a few people still just joining us. So I will start this in a couple of minutes just to give everyone a chance to settle in. Okay, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. Get some nods from the audience. Fantastic. Okay, So, let's get started. My name is Tom Carlson. I'm Professor of Assistive Robotics here at University College London. And today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about our MSc program in Rehabilitation Engineering and Assistive Technologies. And I'm delighted to have with me today a couple of our current students and a couple of our alumni as well. So the way we're going to work today is I'll start off with a roughly sort of 10-minute overview presentation with a few slides to give you a flavour for what we do in our program. And then I'll pass on to our current students to tell you what life is like in the program at the moment, before finishing by listening to some of our alumni to tell you about life beyond the program and going out into the big wide world. Throughout the webinar, please do feel free to use the Q&A bar, which is probably towards the bottom of your screen, because you can type a question at any point during the webinar, and we will look at answering those towards the end. And once we've kind of gone through all of this material and introduced everyone, then you will have an opportunity to ask more questions. At that stage, you'll either be able to type them in, or if you feel comfortable, you're also able to unmute yourself and ask the question directly to us. Just to let everyone know that today's session is being recorded, so you can come back and you can look at it again if you need, but also so some other students who weren't able to join us in person today will be able to look at this a bit later. So that's kind of all the housekeeping started. So I will start the presentation now. The Rehabilitation Engineering and Assistive Technologies program is really quite unique because it's a partnership between the Aspire charity, which is a spinal cord injury charity, the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital, which is based in Stanmore in the UK, and UCL, of course, itself as well. And so this is a program that's really tightly coupled with our research centre called Aspire Create, which is the Centre for Rehabilitation Engineering and Assistive Technologies. And our research lab is based in the hospital campus in Stanmore, which is in northwest London, just at the end of the Jubilee line. But the program isn't just taught there. You'll also have some sessions in central Bloomsbury, and you'll have the option to visit some of our other UCL campuses as well. So let's go on to the next slide. I guess the first thing to think about is what are rehabilitation engineers and assistive technology engineers? What do they do? Well, we really create technology that helps people with functional impairments get on with their activities of daily living. So here in the video, you'll see an example with a company that we worked with, who developed an exoskeleton to help Grant here walk again after paralysis. And so when we're talking about functional impairments, we're thinking about cognitive impairments, but also sensory impairments, and most commonly motor impairments. And these are often intercoupled as well. So it might be that somebody has a coexisting sensory and motor impairment. And I think two other things that we need to think about are the difference between rehabilitation and assistance. So when we're talking about rehabilitative technologies, we're thinking about technologies that we use usually on a temporary short-term basis to support people in recovering functional gain, compared with assistive technologies, which are usually used on a long-term basis, and often it substitutes lost function. So, for example, a wheelchair might be more of an assistive technology, but an exoskeleton might be a rehabilitative technology if we're using it to support physiotherapy or it could be an assistive technology if it's used as a kind of everyday device. Um, in this course, we kind of cover both of these areas. But we can't do it alone. And so really this area is a very multidisciplinary area. And so we work with patients, with clinicians, with scientists, with the third sector, so charities like Aspire, and industry as well. So for how we can actually move these creations into products, for example. I think the something I want to say first off is that there are excellent career prospects coming out from this program. So it's the sort of program that opens doors. It's not putting you on a fixed path into a specific career, but gives you some really specific knowledge and broad set of transferable skills as well. We've got a really cool closed private alumni group. So all of our current students and alumni are invited to join this group on LinkedIn, and it helps you sort of reach out to people who are in careers perhaps that you want to go into as well. So about a third of our students go into research. So whether that's doing a PhD or becoming a research technician or something like that, and gradually progressing up that more academic route. About a third of our students go into much more clinical delivery. Quite a few of them work for the NHS as clinical scientists, clinical engineers, clinical rehabilitation engineers, but also at other hospitals around the world, for example, as motion lab managers. And then about a third of our students go into more industry, and you'll hear from a human factors engineer later on today, but in other areas as well, consultancy, product development, and entrepreneurial sort of areas as well. So these are just a few examples of the sorts of places that our alumni have gone to so far. So what will you be studying if you do this program? The program's quite interesting for a master's program because it's a 50-50 split between taught modules and research modules. So the MSc itself is comprised of 180 credits, and 90 credits of those will be taught modules. You've got 4 compulsory taught modules, which makes up the first 60 credits of that. And these kind of look at the kind of core competencies that we need as a rehabilitation engineer. So the first one is bringing everyone up to scratch on notions of rehabilitation engineering when applied to anatomy and physiology. We have a standard research methodologies and transferable skills module, which really underpins a lot of the research that you will have to be doing. There's a broad module that introduces you to assistive technology devices and rehabilitation robotics, and another kind of fundamentals module on biomechanics, specifically applied to assistive technologies. So everybody does those modules, and everybody does 2 compulsory research modules. So the first one I particularly like, because I happen to be the module lead for that module, is the group research projects. And that's really interesting because it runs across term 1 and term 2 in parallel with your taught modules. And the idea of this module is that we get real world problems that are proposed to us by assistive technology specialists or clinicians. And then we set a challenge for mixed groups of students to actually tackle that challenge, drawing upon the knowledge that they have previously, but also what they're learning through those taught modules as well. And so it also helps you develop teamwork and leadership skills, communications, as well as the technical skills. And that also helps prepare you for your final individual research project, which is 60 credits. So that's a third of the MSc. And hopefully, through the group research projects, you will have learned how to do things and how to manage that project so that you can really succeed in your individual project. And then on top of that, you'll be able to choose 2 optional modules, which will be much more aligned to your own specific interests. So these can be anything from inclusive design and maybe disability and development to things like health economics, or much more technical modules like medical instrumentation or advanced human machine interfaces. These choice of modules are on the website. They kind of get refreshed every year, so this curriculum is always cutting edge. And obviously we check that it works in your timetable as well. So, as I said, individual research projects is a really key component of masters, and they most of the projects are really closely tied with projects that are going on in the academics research within the centre. So here I've just got some photographs of some of the projects that have been going on for a while. So in the top left-hand corner, you can see some work on brain-machine interfaces, which is going on in my lab. And next door to that, we've got some haptic robotics linked up to virtual reality interface to help people with phantom limb pain. We've got a couple of different projects there you can see on wheelchairs, so both on manual wheelchairs where we're monitoring forces and teaching people how to push their wheelchairs efficiently and safely to reduce the risk of injury, or the powered wheelchair that you can see in the center, which has been instrumented, lots of robotics technology going into that to help people drive around if they can't use a conventional interface. And we even link things up like the brain computer interface with the wheelchair to control the wheelchair just by the power of thought. And then we've got some more sort of rehab type projects on the right hand side there. You can see at the top, we're looking at some biomechanics and validation of some wearable technology to support people with knee osteoarthritis. And at the bottom, the iCycle is a project that's been running for many, many years, and it uses things like functional electrical stimulation in order to support people with spinal cord injury to hopefully regain some volitional control of their lower limbs. But it's not just about lower limb function, but it can also improve other areas of health as well, like bladder and bowel, for example. Anyway, so there's a lot of different levels that you can get involved with, from the very technical level of developing the technology to more the validation sort of studies where you might be working with healthy participants or potentially even taking part with some clinical trials. So we've got a range of state-of-the-art facilities that you'll be using at UCL and in Stanmore. I've got a couple of videos here on the left-hand side to show off our hammock system, which is a motion capture system. And as you can see, we can use it for things like biomechanics in the top video, where we can really understand all the motion that people are making. And in the bottom video, we've actually tracked the motion of a powered wheelchair, and we're using that to move a virtual wheelchair in a virtual environment. So it's a really cool facility, and we can track over about a 60 square meter area, which is pretty impressive. So on the Stanmore campus, which is based at the Royal National Orthopaedic Hospital, we've got a student centre, which you can see there. We have a dedicated library and some really helpful librarians there. They're great, and some quiet spaces to study. We've also got a number of research labs, a mechatronic workshop, a mechanical testing workshop, a robotics lab, lots of surgical robots and things in there, a 3D printing lab, a bit of a farm with lots of different types of 3D printing technology that we're working with. We've got computer-aided manufacture facilities and a couple of human experiment labs that we share with the hospital so we can bring patients in for some studies. And obviously the human motion capture platform you've seen there. But you also have access to facilities across the whole of UCL in Bloomsbury and at our new campus out in UCL East as well. So things like the Institute of Making is a really fantastic resource for this program as well as access to things like Student Union for clubs and societies and things. So what are we looking for? Who are we looking to join our course? We're obviously, our primary thing that we're looking for is academic excellence. You have to be good students to join our course, and you need to have a drive to make a difference and really a good passion for research. And we also make sure that we have nice diverse cohorts, and I'll explain why in a moment. So in our program, we have people from all over the world, from different backgrounds and cultures. Because if we think about the sorts of problems that we're trying to solve, these problems are faced by people all around the world, and we need to take into account these different perspectives when we're coming up with our solutions. But not only that, we need diversity in the skills as well. So particularly when you join for the group research projects, you'll be put in groups that you have a mixture of people with different skills. So maybe an electronic engineer with a mechanical engineer, with maybe a biomedical engineer or someone with a clinical background and perhaps a software engineer. And you can see that by building a team of people who have diverse backgrounds and different perspectives from the world with diverse technical skills as well, then you can actually come up with solutions that are really helpful and beneficial to a much wider population. So it should be a good opportunity to mix with lots of different people on this course. So I'm just briefly going to highlight why you should be coming and joining our program. Firstly, you will be getting exposure to and an in-depth understanding of state-of-the-art technologies and thinking about how you can use these to tackle real-world problems. Um, Lots of our work is dealing with research-based learning activities. So they're not toy problems, but they're actual real things that we're working on. And it's highly interdisciplinary research as well. So you'll learn to speak different technical languages and work with people from different technical backgrounds as well. And finally, you'll be working and learning from academics, clinicians, and assistive technology specialists, and maybe some industrial research partners as well, which will help you build a diverse network of support. And as I said, you'll also be able to tap into our LinkedIn network of alumni as well. So, this program will enable you to have a unique opportunity to learn from and work with academics, clinicians, charities, and patients. And before we get on to questions, although please do feel free to put any questions in the chat or in the Q&A, I'd now like to hand over to a couple of our current students to tell you a bit about their experience that they're having in the course so far. So I think we'll start with Ethan, if you can unmute yourself and I will stop sharing my screen just to tell everyone a bit about your experience so far.
Sure, sure. Hello everyone. So my name's Ethan, but you can also call me Junyi. Um, Thanks for joining us today, and I'm gonna give a brief introduction of myself, but also what I've been experienced so far for these MSCs. A bit about me. I did bachelor in sport and exercise medical science, which means I'm not really from the engineering background. So my bachelor provides me a really strong background in understanding all the underlying mechanisms of all sorts of disease. And I was particularly interested to become physiotherapist. But during both work experience in UK and in China, I really think technologies could really help to boost up the efficiency and the effectiveness of the treatment. Therefore, I was searching for my master course and end up in these MSCs. And because, as Tom mentioned before, this MSc really provides a really unique um, combinations from both clinical rehabilitation but links to engineering, which means we are really tackle into the real world problems, but not just design some cool stuff, but we are really helping people. And the second thing I choose this course is because really emphasize in research, which means, as Tom mentioned, we have group research, we have individual research, and because of the small cohort, the academic stuff is so supportive. And if you work hard, you'll get a really high chance to publish your own work. Yeah. What I'm being experienced so far is it's a really right place for me to come. Like in the future, I really want to become a role like bridge the clinical requirements, but also I know what to apply and how to work with all the engineers. Yeah, and from all the session I've been take, like biomechanics research methodologies, is pretty comprehensive. Gives you also the introduction to all the hotspot areas that you will definitely have interest in to dig into. And most important, like the group research, you're working with engineers and you'll learn a lot from the engineers. So I think it's pretty good course to take if you really want to do some transfer, like if you want to transfer from medical to engineer and to some do some product design and become or like product manager in the future. That's really skills that's applies in the job, not in the future. Yeah, that's all about me. And thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Ethan. That was a really lovely summary. And again, highlighting that although most of our students do come from an engineering background, every year we have a few students that do not come from an engineering background, but that's really important because they bring that other perspective in, and you learn a lot from your peers there as well. So it is a possibility to kind of help transition across different disciplines. So really good point. I should have said that myself, but thank you for doing it for me, Ethan. Brilliant. So somebody from a slightly different background next. I think Meredith is another one of our current students, and maybe you can tell us a bit about your experience, Meredith.
Yeah, absolutely. Before I get into that, I will say it is a real blessing to have Eason part of the program with his clinical background. For me, my background is electrical engineering, and it is so neat to be able to collaborate with students that are not electrical engineers. And Eason has brought so much to the table, especially in our group project, which we're working on so far. But a little bit more about me. I am an electrical engineer. That is my background, but I also had a minor in biology. And I had a focus in mechatronics. So I have a little bit of mechanical engineering um, background, a little taste of that in my undergrad, as well as a few biology classes. So I took those because I wanted to pursue prosthetics initially, early on in my undergrad. But I also found that I have a real passion for making a real impact and creating solutions that um, really apply to real people. And that is a big reason why you should take and apply for this master's program because um, I would be really interested to find any other program that does such a good job of teaching the master's students how important it is to work with diverse opinions as well as um, different clinicians and the real patients that are the people that you're designing for. Um, and so, knowing that that's what I wanted, I applied, and I'm so happy that I've been a part of this program because that is what you get a taste of. Our group project, which we're working on right now, is to help a real need, and we're learning from Tom how how engineers would go about doing that. And it's just been an amazing experience. I personally, a little bit about things other than the school part, I love being on the Stanmore campus. It's a real home. The hospital feels a lot quieter and not as busy as the big Bloomsbury campus. However, it's easy to head to Bloomsbury whenever you need and access those resources that UCL is wonderful and offers. So, if you're like me and the big city scares you a little bit, this is also the master's program for you because you can get a little bit of both. Um, that and the people that I've gotten to meet, and as Ethan said, the resources that this master's program and this division offers um, are really individualized because this is such a unique program. You get a lot of individual support, which I know is a big deal for those of you who may be coming from a different country or a different culture. You're gonna be taken care of while you're here. So just know that from all aspects, it is a wonderful place to be.
Thanks, Meredith. Nice to know it's the best of both worlds here at UCL. So you've got that big city living, if you like, and escape to the quieter Stanmore campus when you need that as well. And you can pick and choose between the two, which is really good. And some really important points again on diversity because dealing with different opinions and conflicting opinions is what we have to do in the real world as well. And so being able to manage that in a kind of safe environment and a safe space to start with and learning how to approach these kind of things, I think is quite helpful. Good. Okay, so let's move on to some of our alumni now who have been through the masters, done a lot of hard work, survived, come out the other end, and they can tell you a bit about life beyond the masters as well. So let's start with Hannah, maybe, shall we?
Thanks, Tom. Um, so first of all, it's great hearing the current students where the different backgrounds. I actually came into the masters coming from biomedical science, so I definitely resonate with coming from a science background and then learning all these skills. And I would summarize then, the master's experience is this great toolkit as Tom showed, there's all these compulsory modules, which are great to get that foundational aspect. But then the optional modules really, for me, helped tailor my specific passions and interests. And for me, with my passion for neurotechnology, there was a neural engineering module. And also, I did the um, psychology module, which partners with the Global Disability Hub, which again is this really great mashup. We've talked about diversity here of product design and other kind of cohorts, not just within the direct MSc sort of create program. And I think alongside engineering, it's this great multidisciplinary. So you've got psychology, you've got product design. And also my experience at UCL is even within those modules, if you have a passion, there's such freedom in asking other module leads, like, can you share some slides? I'm really passionate. So it's definitely your place to encourage to, share your passions. You can really shape that master's year, how you kind of want to go beyond. And so leading on from that, when I graduated, I started out as a junior biomedical engineer at a what's known as a class 3 actual neuromodulation device. So it was deep brain stimulator or bladder control with a peripheral nerve. And I grew and worked up from junior biomedical engineer to biomedical engineer. And alongside that, there wasn't actually a human factors department at my company. So, alongside those responsibilities and taking on what I'd learned from UCL, working with patients and doing my own self study and education, the further education there, I then grew into leading the what's known as human factors engineering discipline alongside biomedical engineering, so doing clinical field support. And so I was there for basically 4 years. And then recently, I've actually gone from industry to consulting. So I'm now working as a senior human factors engineer. And I've recently been achieved my chartered engineer status with the Institute of Engineering and Technology. So a really nice complementary kind of full circle moment where it acknowledges my medical engineering sort of specialism as well as human factors engineering. But yeah, I would say that the MSc was just a great springboard to be able to, like Tom said, there's so many transferable skills, critical thinking, and how you then take on regulations and product design and working with various stakeholders, whether those are external and internal. And those are just great life skills. So thank you.
Thank you, Hannah. It's wonderful to hear about that fascinating journey that you've been on, like both through the MSc, but you've done so much beyond there as well, and you know, having the confidence to then go a bit outside your main discipline and create these new areas and build up that human factors capability within the company is fantastic. Um, Congrats on your chartered engineering status as well. That's no mean feat, and that's a wonderful thing to achieve. And I think the other thing that you mentioned about this mix of cohorts is quite important as well. So some of the modules that I've said that the students will be on are indeed just small and your cohort of students within your program, so you can feel comfortable and at home and nice and safe there. But some of the modules, then especially the optional ones, allow you to mix with students on different programs as well, so you can you know, build connections with psychologists or with biologists or with medical engineers or whatever, like from different programs. So I think that's a really good opportunity again, as you said, Hannah, for meeting other people. So, last but not least, let's move across to Richard, who's another one of our alumni. So the floor is yours, Richard.
Hello, thank you. Yeah, lovely to hear everyone's opinions and experiences, and nice to see you again, Hannah. There we go. So, yeah, so I'm Richard, and I did the MSc part-time actually. So I did it over 5 years while I was working as a trainee clinical scientist for the NHS, and also for a time as well as a research assistant later on. And so I did the MSc, and after I finished, I moved on to work as a design engineer again for the NHS, and I've recently come back as a PhD student to work with Tom. So I've kind of moved around a bit, and I've come back to academia as well. So just a bit about why I chose the MSc. So I think at the time, so I was working in a communication aid service in the NHS, and I was really enjoying that experience. I was working with patients. I was getting like, yeah, which was really exciting. But I have a background in mechanical engineering, and I was kind of missing that technical aspect as well. So I think at the time I was trying to become a trainee clinical scientist, and I went to see Tom, and he talked about the work that he was doing, and yeah, it just seemed really exciting, and it just sort of it felt that was a really good way for me to kind of come back to my engineering and bring back that kind of technical expertise, and start thinking about research as well. And I think throughout the MSc, I really learned a huge amount of transferable skills. So definitely in relation to research, and also in my hard engineering skills as well. So and I think there's been a lot of talk about the diversity of the cohorts, and because I did it over quite a long time, I got to meet a huge amount of people, which was a really brilliant experience. And I think definitely like working with neuroscientists, other engineers of different disciplines, it was really rewarding, and it kind of helped shape my ideas and thoughts about different problems as well. And I think that's another thing in relation to the course as well. I think I really liked the kind of discursive aspect to it. So we would kind of sit, we would talk about problems, we would talk. It's not kind of rote learning about doing exams. It's more a kind of discussion. You're learning from your peers, you're learning from the academics, which I found really valuable. Um, yeah, another highlights as well. Yeah, and I think as well because I have a kind of passion, real interest in designing and making things as well, and solving real problems. So I think it's like Meredith, you were saying that as well. This is actually I did a mechanical engineering degree, and that was really interesting, but in some ways a bit dry. So I kind of wanted to bring it back to the human, and that was really exciting. So yeah, to work on the group projects, I got to interview a whole load of people with spinal cord injury, understand about their experience, and also do some real light design and development and testing of devices as well, which was yeah fantastic. Um, and just a little bit maybe about why I've come back, because I did some work as a design engineer, but then yeah, I kind of felt I was looking for I don't know that kind of one problem that problem you can get really in depth with. Coming back to research, trying to think about that as well, and I think as well as I really enjoyed my experience on the course, to come back and work with the academics and the team, and go back to the lab as well. So that's probably my yeah. But happy to answer any questions later on as well.
Great, thanks, Richard. It's yeah, really good to hear about that journey that you've had and kind of gone out, explored the real world, and then decided that actually research is for you and coming back to tackle some of those problems with us. So we love it when our students do come back and join us and we can keep in touch with them, which is fantastic. I think the other thing that you didn't mention was that you actually got a publication out from some of the group research project, didn't you? Which was good. And I think even our current students are reading that publication at the moment, and that's helping them with their own group research project. They were presenting that just in a session the other day to me, so that was
Oh
really
wow.
nice to see
Okay.
that it's being useful to some of the community already, which is
Yeah.
fantastic.
And that was
Um,
that was with Hannah as well. So
yes, so fantastic. So I can see we've got a question that's popped up already from Jasmine, and I will answer that. But I think also if you want to ask any other questions, do feel free to unmute your microphone. Just this is being recorded, so if you don't want to unmute your microphone, that's also fine. If you're happy with that, please do ask your questions. One of the questions, good question, Jasmine, says, has UCL previously had any involvement with this cybathlon competition? Or if not, do you hope or plan to get involved in future events? So, good question. Cybathlon is a bit like the Olympics for assistive technologies, and it's run in Zurich. And actually, when I did my postdoc, I was working out at EPFL in Switzerland in Lausanne. So I spent 4 years working there, collaborating with some of the teams that put together the Cybathlon competition. So Robert Reno and his group in ETH. We as a lab have not at the moment competed in cybathlon, but a lot of my colleagues have from different universities as well. I think from London, Queen Mary's did, and yes, I'm still in touch with my old lab. I think Essex have as well from the UK. And this is something that we'd be keen on doing at some point in the future. Something that my group is looking at in the meantime, though, is actually contributing to the um, BCI competition, which is run each year as part of the annual BCI conference. And so there's a bit of an overlap sometimes there. But this is certainly something that we could think about doing in the future. So, does anybody have any other questions? Anybody brave want to unmute themselves and ask? Whether that's to me or any of our current students or alumni? Or do feel free to type any more questions in the Q&A or in the chat. Or maybe we've covered everything that you wanted to talk about. Maybe in the meantime, Ethan or Meredith, do you have any questions for our alumni whilst you've got them here? Is there anything that you would like to know from them? It's a rare opportunity.
Yeah,
Ethan.
I'm responsible for the PPIE. I think Hannah and Richard are going to be really strong stakeholder for our project. But they already did helping us by providing all the amazing studies we discussed in the previous group project. Yeah.
Brilliant. So can you explain a bit what PPIE is and why that's important, Ethan?
PPIE is collaboration between the publics and the clinic, like involving all the patients, the patient caregiver, but also involving with the clinicians, the engineers. We tackle the same
Yeah.
problem because each of us have different aspects or different concept of the disease or the problem we want to tackle, and we working together to design something that really useful. Yeah.
So it's something that's really important in the UK that patients say no research about us without us. And it's about bringing the patients on board right from day one when you're starting to think about creating a research project. So they can actually become part of the team in some capacity or another and advising you. And then if you involve patients in actually designing the research protocols and informing that research, then you're likely to create something that's much more impactful and usable in the real world beyond that.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, I'll add to that and say that I do get a lot of questions sometimes between the difference between PPIE and human factors engineering. And
Hmm.
I think there's a lot of parallels, and I would say almost PPIE is typically maybe more research, so institutes like UCL specific, but I would say it's kind of a bedrock and a really great starting point of when you go into, say, human factors engineering. And essentially, human factors engineering is um, part of the regulations you need for medical device development. And it is kind of a cross-disciplinary. So it's basically you are proving alongside your system and design requirements that your device is safe and effective for use. And so you kind of build on those PPI principles. So you do iteratively talk to your what's known as intended users. So that can be patients, caregivers, clinicians, nurses. Really depends on the scope of who's interacting with it. And that includes a lot of design aspects. But another element that I think is less known is about the risk management side. And in research, you do sort of COSH and the research that builds on those same principles. It's just there's a framework there about thinking about the severity and risks and hazards and these sort of terms you may be familiar with, and then the likelihood. And you sort of, from human factors engineering perspective, you're thinking about the use. So that interaction of, say, you're taking a brain computer interface or a wheelchair. In some of the examples you said today, it's about not just the whole thing. So not just the tablet, the app, or it's actually the mechanics, everything we're holding. And I think the other thing as well within the MSc is we talk a lot about accessibility, which is so crucial and something I've tried to push wherever I've gone, where maybe ergonomics and other areas are more well known. And so you take all these different factors and you want to make sure that when we do what's known as later summative studies. That's like the big, large study we submit. So for FDA, you need at least 15 people. And so, yeah, that's kind of end to end. So PPI, I would say at the start, and at the very end, there's these very highly regulated studies we have to do in industry that very expensive for companies. So it's a really critical. We kind of think at the very start, like Tom said, and you guys have said, iteratively thinking about the patient. And so that effectively, when you get to that later part, they can do your tasks, what's known as critical task, where there is perceived to be the highest risk, and they can do those safely. And the outcome of that is that we talk a lot about translating to patients. It's critical. We do all these different activities so that there's less recalls and less harm when things come to market.
Mm. I think that's a really good point because as part of any of the sort of certification that you need for a medical device, you have to have that body of evidence that shows how you've created that over time as well and how you've got to the point of having that product. And so if you've involved patients throughout that journey, that also makes that much more credible as well. Sometimes it's very challenging when somebody kind of gets to the end, they've gone through all their product design, they come up with a solution, and then they present it to a clinician and say, would this work for your patients? And the clinician's like, well, that's not really a problem our patients have, you know? So I think you're absolutely right, like involving that at every point of the way. And then obviously the human factors becomes more and more important for creating that product at the end. Oh, good. So we have a few more questions coming up now. Excellent. We're warming up. It does take a while to type some of these. So, Jasmine, thanks for answering my last question. I'm currently doing a 3-year individual research project, which I'm interested in continuing with beyond the end of this year. Would it be possible to propose and continue with this as an individual project at UCL? So, the way that individual projects work is usually there will be a selection proposed by different supervisors that people can choose from, but we do absolutely encourage co-proposals of projects as well. So we could, depending, I don't know exactly what your project is, but depending on the theme of the project, then we can look to pair you up with an academic that has an interest related to that area, and then work together to come up with a proposal. So the key thing is there are two bits here. So firstly, the project has to be really aligned with your interests, which I guess if you're proposing it yourself, it will be. But the second thing is it has to meet the intended learning outcomes from the MSc as well to demonstrate that you have all those skills. So we might need to make a few tweaks to the project, but I'm almost 99% certain that we'll be able to run with your project and make those tweaks in order to make sure that it satisfies what is required from a master's research project. So most of the projects tend to be supervised by people within our research centre, but also if it's a project that needs different expertise, we can find you a supervisor from across UCL. And UCL's very big, so we've got 11 different faculties across all different disciplines. So long as it's still related to assistive technologies or rehabilitation or something along those lines, then I'm sure that's something that we could continue. We also have to make sure that there's a certain amount of novelty in the project beyond what you've already done. So you can't get credit for stuff that happened before the MSc, but I'm sure there'll be a nice research question that we can formulate around that for your individual project. So good question, and I think the short answer is yes, with a few little caveats there. Okay, so Million, you say I joined a bit late. Apologies, no problem at all. Just to say that this has been recorded as well, so I don't know at which point you joined, but if you missed anything, you'll be able to go back and look at the recording as well. And you can always, then if there's something else that you wanted to ask, you can email that address that Emilian has kindly put in the chat, so reate-msc@ucl.ac.uk. And if you have a question on that material, send it across that address and we will answer that. But your current question says you're quite curious to know what estimated percentage of this MSc graduates go on to PhD study, and is there a structured support towards PhD applications? So again, a really good question. I would say around about a third of our students go into PhDs or some sort of academic research. So that might be a research assistant post prior to doing a PhD, or straight into a PhD. So roughly a third-ish over the course of the cohorts that we've had. Um, and there is various support to help with your PhD applications. So everyone has a personal academic tutor, so you can get some advice from them. But there are also support from the UCL Careers Office that can actually help you in terms of preparing your personal statement or CV for some of those applications. And then there are also various workshops that we run throughout the year. So you'll get events and things that you can sign up to and go along to where people talk about what a PhD is, how to formulate a good research question for your thesis, hearing from existing PhD students. And I guess the other thing is that we have lots of PhD students here on campus. You will have some of them will be acting as postgraduate teaching assistants on your course. So you'll be able to talk to PhD students and listen a bit to what their life is like, and they'll be able to give you a bit of support there, I think, as well. Um, and the other thing, as I said, is you'll be part of the UCL Aspire Create alumni group on LinkedIn. So you can actually reach out to existing PhD students as well, especially if they're at a university that you're wanting to go to. So, some of our PhD students have stayed on at UCL. Richard, with us right now, has gone through that whole process and he's at UCL. But then we have PhD students around the world as well. So that might be helpful to link up with them. So
Just,
lots of opportunities there.
just to say that I think when I was applying for this PhD, even though it was maybe 2 or 3 years after I'd graduated, I did actually reach out and spoke to one of my previous supervisors who'd done a PhD in the team, and that was really helpful. And they were really happy to have a chat. And yeah, that was one of the things that I did.
Fantastic. Good. Any other questions from the prospective students? No.
Just while we wait for other questions, I
Go
would
for it,
also
Hannah.
say as well that when I was doing the MSc, I didn't know immediately what I wanted to go into afterwards. So whether that's academia, but also Richard meant about the scientific training program. I know for me, Lindsay was a great help, like understanding and other people within the group. And as Tom's mentioned, the LinkedIn area, we're just asking, and there's so many different schemes, whether that's in the UK or abroad or thinking of, and even within UCL as well. So I think, yeah, don't be afraid to just ask or be curious and shadow people or see if just because I mean within so much opportunity just within London and within the wider space. I mean, I'm based in Cambridge now and it's only like an hour away, so there's quite a lot of different things during your time. Feel free just to ask and have a look because I remember my time I would come in and drop in, and Freya at the time was doing project work just to see what was going on and get a taste for those sort of things. So always be
Yeah.
curious.
So Freya was one of our PhDs and then postdocs with us
Yeah.
as well. So fantastic. Good. Okay. Well, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. A huge thank you to our alumni and current students for taking some time out of your day to come and give our prospective students a bit of a flavour for what life is like with the MSc and the opportunities it gives you. And thank you very much to our prospective students for joining us today and for asking some really good questions. I think, thank you, Emiliana, for posting all of those links in the chat and for organizing this event as well. We really appreciate that. So if you have any other questions, as I said, please do reach out to us by email. So that's reate-msc@ucl.ac.uk, as Emiliana put in the chat. And then we can either answer that by email or we can arrange a kind of one-to-one chat if anybody wants to have one-to-one chat, or if you want to come and visit the campus or something, we can arrange that. So thank you very much. I don't think, Emiliana, if I've forgotten anything, let me know. Otherwise, I will draw this to a close. All good from Emiliana. So thank you very much, everyone. And I will give you 9 minutes back of your day. So enjoy. Take care. and see you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you.
Thanks, bye.